So I wanted to speak today about, you've heard a lot today about the exciting possibilities of IIIF and some detail about the specification themselves. But I just want to give you some kind of practical advice about where to get started, where to look for more information. We've been giving you a lot of information today, so I'm going to leave you some kind of self-guided guides, which you can take at your own pace if you want to look at things in more detail. So the first step in implementing IIIF, you've already done, so well done. You're here at a IIIF event. Especially the showcase is a great way to get kind of an overview of exactly what's going on in IIIF and particularly kind of the latest developments. So it's a really good choice. If you're carrying on to the conference, you're going to hear the kind of the latest developments from across the world in IIIF, including in the specifications and also from various people presenting about what they're doing in their institution. I wanted to leave you things. So at the bottom of almost all my slides, I've got this links, and if you copy that down as I go through, all of the things I'm going to talk about are linked from that GitHub page, so do take a note of that link. So ways to learn about IIIF, as well as attending these presentations, there's also things that you can take and you can read in your own time. One that I can recommend is Tom Crane's blog, which is linked from that GitHub page. He unfortunately couldn't be with us this week, but he has got this excellent intro to IIIF series with a lot of kind of practical examples and guidance about different parts of the specification. Through a lot of the community's work, we've also developed a number of workshops, and some of these are kind of to be taught workshops, and some of these are more self-directed. A really good one is the one by Jason Ronaldo, the 2-day workshop, and that's a very much self-guided that goes in depth into the presentation image APIs. There's also a 1-day workshop by Jack Reed and Drew. I know Jack's here. And then there's also a 5-day DHSI workshop. So we've been sending people to the DHSI workshops in Victoria for the last 2 years, and this is a workshop we've been using for a 5-day IIIF course. So there's lots of kind of information on the APIs, exercises. It goes very much into depth into the presentation image and also in the latest version into the annotations, how you create and search annotations. And then, of course, there's all the presentations that we do at conferences like this. So we're planning to upload these to YouTube, and you can see previous versions of these talks on the IIIF YouTube channel. And then finally, as Stacey mentioned, if you are stuck or you just want some advice, ask the community. One of the benefits I found working in the community, both as a IIIF technical coordinator in my previous role as at National Library of Wales, is that people are really open and happy to share what they're doing. So the best way to reach out to people is there's a IIIF Discuss email list, and there's also a Slack channel, which was mentioned. There's also a beginners channel on that Slack solution, which you can just ask very basic questions, and people are more than happy to help, although you're more than welcome to ask it more widely. We also have these fortnightly telephone calls, which you can see the kind of the latest developments. They're every 2 weeks we have kind of demos, and then after 2 weeks we have a more technical call. So monthly we have kind of demos of what people are doing. And you can also join one of the IIIF interest groups, which Stacey mentioned. But just ask fellow institutions. So there's lots of different institutions represented here. And if you're interested in what they're doing, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share what they're doing. And then finally, there's me and Josh, the IIIF staff. If you're really stuck and nobody's answering you, which I don't believe would happen, me and Josh are always here to help in any way. So in practice, where do you start? So I'm going to talk mostly about the images. Obviously, you can use the videos, but I'm just going to talk about the images in this case. So in practice, you'll probably start with a set of images that you've digitized, probably very high quality scans. There are lots of formats. I don't want to go into too much technical detail that are supported with the image servers. But just to say, through server evidence surveys, most people in the community are using JPEG 2000, although it's not to say that all are, but most people are converting these high-quality scans into JPEG 2000. You will probably have metadata, kind of structural metadata about how these images relate to each other, and you also have metadata for the user, so the author, the title, information to be able to discover it. And the advice is to start with the image API. So how can you start with the image API? Probably the easiest solution is to look to see if your existing DAMS or content management system already supports IIIF, We've got a number of big vendors that already do, so OCLC, Gallery Systems, Viridian, and there are others which already implement IIIF. And if you're lucky enough to already have it, and then maybe it's just a case of switching it on. And if your vendor doesn't support IIIF, please talk to them. And if you need any help with us to work with vendors, we're happy to help and explain what others have done. So that's the kind of the first solution, which isn't always possible. So the second stage is maybe a hosting solution. So this is paying somebody else to host your IIIF images and provide the IIIF URLs to you. And there are a number of companies that offer this service, but one is Clocan, based in Switzerland, and Digerati, based in the UK. But there are other options of this hosting. And then finally, especially large institutions, but other institutions as well, tend to install their own IIIF image server. And this implements the IIIF image API that was discussed earlier by Mike. And there's three main ones. We ran a survey last year asking what image servers people were using. And it wasn't hugely responsive. I think we had 30 responses. But to give you a kind of indication of what people are using, the main ones are IIP Image, Loris, and Cantaloupe. But if you go to the IIIF Awesome list, you can see a list of all of the image servers. They tend to be very similar in functionality, and it's very much a question of what fits better into your infrastructure. So if you've got lots of Java developers, you might like Cantaloupe. If you're more Linux-based, you might like IIP Image. If you're more into Python, you might like Loris. So it depends. The functionality is very similar, but it depends which fits in your infrastructure. So once you've implemented this image server, you've kind of reached step one. You've implemented the image API. It gives you all this rotation, this cropping, this rotation. It allows you to show it in a kind of a simple zooming viewer. It allows you to use this kind of cropping tool from the University College Dublin. And it also allows you to choose kind of a very basic viewer, so OpenSeaDragon and Leaflet. So this is a viewer which can only show a single image at a time. It doesn't include metadata, it's just for a zoomable image. But this can be enough. This is an example from the National Museum of Sweden, and they've only implemented the image API, and they've embedded OpenSeaDragon into their museum content management system. And so they're able to give access to IIIF images without implementing the other APIs. I think they're discussing moving on to the presentation API, but at the moment that's good enough for them to go live with. And we mentioned earlier the possibility of georeferencing. So this is a georeferencer from Clocan. Once you've implemented the image API, you can take it to this georeferencer and start georeferencing it. But there are things missing. So what sort of things are missing? So this is only single image. If you want to look at multiple images, you need the presentation API. If you want to put the images in some kind of order, you're going to need the presentation API. And then the context, so the metadata about this image, that is also part of the presentation API. And this is kind of quite an abstract way of looking at the presentation API, but you have IIIF images. This example I'm using is a map with related archival documents, and I'm trying to kind of put them all together. And so I have metadata and I have images, and then I have this black box IIIF manifest generator, which creates this IIIF manifest. And when we were doing the survey, people tend to develop their own manifest generators. There are libraries on IIIF Awesome to make this easier, but everybody's metadata and structures seem to be slightly different, and so people are tending to develop their own manifest generators. Once you have your manifest, you've done it, really, you're there. You can start choosing your IIIF viewers. So we've seen the universal view, we saw the Tiffy from Göttingen, Mirador and the new Mirador 3, which has come out recently, and there's also the curation viewer from Japan, and there's lots of different viewers you can choose, which fits best into your infrastructure. Once you've implemented the presentation API, people can start reusing your content. So Ben showed this earlier, where he took a content from the National Library of Wales and put it next to content from the Huntingham and did them side by side. So once you've done the presentation API, you can start doing that. And again, we saw creating exhibitions. So this is an example from the V&A with a product from Digerati, where you're taking a manifest, you're adding all these annotations which guide you through the material. And there's another example from CogApp, which does something similar. And then, of course, you can share it with Europeana. So once you've got the presentation API, you can start sharing it both within your institution, but also more widely. And then finally, next steps. So once you've done the presentation and the IIIF API, a lot of people, this is as far as they get, but there are other APIs. The search API, if you're going to start annotating, crowdsourcing, working with scholars, you might want to look at the search API. And then authentication, if you need to restrict access to your material, but allow certain people to access it, then you might want to look at the authentication API. There are some software available for the search API. There's something Okacoke from NCSU, and there's the simple annotation server, which are possibilities for the searching. For the authentication, again, this is more custom code that people are developing to integrate with their own authentication systems. But just to finish, I'd like to say, if you do want more information, please ask. The community is very welcoming and happy to help and guide you in different areas. Do join the IIIF telephone calls if you want to hear more of the latest developments. And finally, thank you for coming to this event. And hopefully, if you come to the conference, we'll see you again over the next few days. Thank you.